The title of this discussion is Challenging the Culture of Secrecy. And the reason I thought that would be interesting to talk about is it's something that strikes me whenever I go to file an RTI request. Whenever I do that, I tend to be met with surprise. People do tend to kind of not expect a girl, especially sometimes, to walk into certain places. Most recently, I went to the police headquarters, for instance, and I often find people are entirely unprepared for an ordinary person just walking in and handing over a sheet of paper and saying, I want to know this. And I think there's something really, for me, quite powerful in that. But I also kind of want to reflect on that and kind of question about how effective it actually is by talking through this with some people who are working and using RTI in their work. So before we kick off, this panel is mostly going to be in English and Tharindu will be speaking Sinhala. And we'll have a couple round of questions, and after that, open it up for Q&A. So do feel free to jump in and ask questions at any time. So I'm going to actually kick off with Sankhitha. And so Sankhitha works at Transparency International, which in itself has done a lot of work with RTI and filing RTI. But what I thought would be interesting to talk about today was the RTI van, which, for those who don't know, has been going around the country getting citizens to file RTI. And I thought it would be kind of interesting for Sankhitha to talk about what are some of the really, what are the issues that people are filing on, and what are some of these success stories that maybe aren't being reported in the news.
Thanks, Riza. Very happy to be here today. I know a lot of people here are also experts in RTI and are extremely familiar with all of the processes related to RTI. So to get right into some of our experiences with citizens. Yes, we have done the RTI van in 8 districts, and we are kicking off this month again in Jaffna and Ampara also. In addition to this, we work with partner organizations and our own officers in Vaunia and Matara, helping people to file RTIs whenever they call us or whenever they walk into our offices or email or contact us in any way. So in terms of thematic areas, one common theme that runs through all areas in Sri Lanka is Samurdhi. We all know that Samurdhi is quite a politicized process. There's lack of clarity on how one becomes entitled to Samurdhi. If you look at the website of the Samurdhi Authority, there is no criteria mentioned, so there's very little proactive disclosure. And in terms of specific stories, there was a group in Nisale we were doing a training for. And at the beginning of the training, people were really interested when we talked about RTI to address the issue of Samurdhi through it. They wanted to ask about who had received Samurdhi, how many people had applied, how much money was spent, etc. But during the meeting, the Samurdhi officer of the area came and sat at the meeting. And then immediately the level of interest dropped. And then one person ended up filing an RTI, not everyone who had originally expressed an interest. And then you found that after the person filed the RTI, certain people who were receiving receiving Samurdhi, stopped receiving Samurdhi. So what happened there was that there were people who were getting Samurdhi who were not entitled to it, who shouldn't have been getting it, who had political connections, and that stopped because just one person filed an RTI. I'll tell you another story on education. Across the country on school admissions, there have been RTIs filed. And in most instances, people don't get information. They filed an RTI and their child gets into school. So someone recently referred to this as a legitimate form of influence almost. because principals, school teachers, whoever is involved in the process, they know that people are watching and that people are now demanding accountability. We did a program in Nonagama, in Ambalangoda, where a lady there just decided to file, just to kind of try it out, decided to file an RTI asking why a principal had not been appointed to the local school, Rotavala Mahavidyalaya, why a principal had not been appointed, what action the Ministry of Education had taken in relation to that, what documentation has passed, etc. And the day after the RTI was sent, a principal was appointed to the school. So a common thread again is that you don't necessarily receive information because you file it, but the issue you're seeking to address gets addressed. This is important because as TISL we are a bit puritanical about whether you can get solutions through RTI. We did a film on RTI, a quasi like a docudrama on RTI, and we didn't want to portray it as giving solutions. But in more cases than not, there have been solutions and no information. So that's something interesting as well. On job interviews, a lot of people file RTIs, and these RTIs come from within the public sector as well. It's not necessarily someone from outside who has applied and not got their job, but public sector officials filing about their own promotions, own applications as well, which I thought is interesting. A couple of stories, specifically on corruption. In the Vaunia General Hospital, there was a lady whose husband was scheduled to get an operation, and an attendant at the hospital asked for a bribe of 300,000 rupees to speed up the operation. She said she couldn't afford it, and she said she'll give 150,000 rupees. But having paid it, she also complained to the police about it, right? And then the speeding up of the operation also didn't happen. And so, at the same time, the police ordered the hospital to have an inquiry about this. No inquiry was held. So then, through our office in Vaunia, she filed an RTI asking for the inquiry report, knowing full well that an inquiry had not happened. And then they decided to speed up the inquiry process and call the other party, had the inquiry. And then during the inquiry they found that the hospital had falsified the attendance register to say that this attendant was in hospital the day he was said to have accepted the bribe, right? So then our office, the client through our office, filed an RTI asking for the attendance register and saw that somebody else's name had been tipexed and this person's name entered. And we also managed to get CCTV footage from the ATM through the bank, etc., etc. It's gone to the Bribery Commission. The person has been suspended and the money returned to the person from whom the bribe had been taken. So it's being used in very interesting ways, and these are not always reported because the media tends to be interested in the big stories. So these are a few instances, and I'll speak about one more, where in the Northern Provincial Council, a person who was an owner of a shop in a row of shops in the Jaffna district had filed an RTI asking one particular shop had been built in a way that was not in accordance with regulations. And the information officer had interestingly responded saying that it was due to political influence. Right? So that's a situation where the information officer is seeking protection in RTI because he is performing his job and giving the information, and he doesn't have to take responsibility for the fact that political influence happened, which also is a very interesting turn of events, I thought. So I'll stop there, Riza. Yeah.
Really interesting kind of insights there. So Sankhitha mentioned the role of media when she was speaking. So I thought it'll be interesting next to talk to Tharindu. So for those who don't know, Tharindu has filed a lot of RTI requests in his work, he's done a lot of investigative work using RTI. Then Tharindu RTI request කීපයක් file කරලා තියෙන්නේ. හැබැයි RTI හැම කතාවකට පාවිච්චි කරන්න බැහැ. ඉතින් මම පොඩ්ඩක් අහන්න ඕනේ කොහොමද ඒ තීරණ ගන්නෙ? දැන් මේ කතාවකට මම RTI පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ කොහොමද පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ? ඒ අතර පොඩ්ඩක්.
අපිට එදිනෙදා යොමු කරන්නේ සාමාන්‍ය හැම විශ්වයකටම හැම විචාරයකටම RTI පාවිච්චි කරන්න අමාරුයි. අතර මේක ප්‍රායෝගිකව නැහැ. අපිට පැහැදිලි මූලාශ්‍රයක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒක කියන්නේ RTI අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙම නැත්නම් ප්‍රගාමීය හිතලා විදිහින් යටතේ වෙබ්සයිට් එකක උතුරු දාලා තියෙනවා නම් නැත්නම් අපි ඉල්ලුව ගමන් අපි අහුව ගමන් කියනවා නම් අපිට ඒ වගේ ඒවාට RTI දාන්න ඕනේ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ලංකාවේ දැන් සමහර මාධ්‍යංශ තියෙනවා සමහර ආයතන තියෙනවා ප්‍රගාමීය හිතලා විදිහින් යටතේ දැනටමත් පොදු අවකාශය ප්‍රසිද්ධ කරලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් එහෙම ඒවා අපිට RTI මොකද ඉල්ලන්න ඕනේ අපිට පහසුවෙන් හොයාගන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට RTI පක්කරේ විස්තරයක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් හෝ විචාරයක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් ගැඹුරට හොයලා බලනවා නම් RTI අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. දැන් මේක ප්‍රායෝගික ප්‍රශ්න තමයි ගොඩක් අය RTI පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ නැත්නම් මාධ්‍යයේදී මේකට ලොකු කාලයක් ගත වෙනවා කියනවා. හැබැයි ඉතින් අර මොකක්ද මාතෘකාවක් මේ මොහොතේ කතා වෙච්ච අපිට ආගන්න බැරි වුණාට RTI වලින් පැහැදිලි තත්ත්ව අරගෙන පැහැදිලි තොරතුරු අරගෙන අපිට ඕන නම් ඊට වැඩි හොඳ යමක් දෙන්න පුළුවන්. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට කියනවා නම් ඔබට මතකද අර්නායක නායයම මේ සිද්ධිය වුණේ මතක විදිහට 2016 මේ මාසෙ තමයි අර්නායක නායකගේ ඒ දවස්වල ගොඩනැගිලි පර්යේෂණ ආයතනයේ සමීක්ෂණයක් කළා අර්නායක ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම් කොට්ටාසේ අධ්‍යවදානම් සහ මධ්‍යවදානම් ප්‍රදේශ ගැන. ඒකට කරන්න හේතුව තමයි අර්නායක නායකයන්වත් එක්ක මේ පැත්තේ අම්බලකන්ද විවිධ පැති තිබ්බා. ඒ හැම පැත්තකම ගෙවල් කඩාගෙන ගත්තා. දැන් මිනිස්සුන්ට ප්‍රශ්නයක් ආවා දැන් අපි ඉන්නේ අධ්‍යවදානම් පැත්තකට අපේ ගෙවල් කවදා හරි නායයිද ඒක දැනගන්න. ඒකින්ද ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම් කාර්යාලයේ තිබ්බා එවකට ආපදා කල්පනා කරන්න එමකින් කියන්නලා අපේ දර්ශනය අපා ගෙන්නලා සාකච්ඡාවක් තිබ්බා. ඒකෙදි ගමේ අය මේ ගැන ප්‍රශ්න කරද්දී එමෙන්ටිවරයා කිව්වේ ගොඩනැගිලි පර්යේෂණ ආයතනයෙන් මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් කරන සමීක්ෂණයෙන් පස්සේ අධ්‍යවදානම් සහ මධ්‍යවදානම් කියලා අඳුරගන්න පැතිවල තියෙන කේවල් ඔක්කොමයි කරනවා කියලා. හැබැයි අපිට එහෙම එකක් දකින්න පුළුවන්කම ලැබුණේ නැහැ. 2016 අවුරුද්දයි ඒ වෙනකොට දකින්න හම්බුනේ නැහැ. අපි අහුවාම ගොඩනැගිලි පර්යේෂණ ආයතනයෙන් අහුවාම ඒක උත්තරයක් නැහැ. ඒකම ආපදා කරුණා කරන මධ්‍යස්ථානයෙන් අහුවාම ඒක උත්තරයක් නැහැ. මෙහෙම උත්තරයක් නැති කරලා දැන් ඒකට අරමායන් කියන කතාව වෙන එක අවුරුද්දක් යනකොට සාමාන්‍ය ලංකාවේ මාසයක් දෙකේ කතා වෙන්නේ මේ කියන කතාවක් නෑ. ඉතින් අපිට ඕනකම තිබ්බම මේ මිනිස්සුන්ට දැනගන්න බෑ තමන් ඉන්නේ අධ්‍යාවදානම් පැත්තකද තමන් ඉන්නේ කියලා කවුරුහරි නාය යනවා කියලා. ඉතින් මේකින්ද මම RTI එකක් දැම්මා ගොඩනැගිලි පර්යේෂණ ආයතනයට. මොකද ඒගොල්ලෝ කටින් යවුවා මේගොල්ලෝ කිව්වේ නෑ. එහෙම කිව්වනම් අපිට එහෙම RTI දාන්න ඕනේ නෑනේ. එහෙම දාලා බලද්දී ඒගොල්ලෝ තොරතුරු පන්තියක් දුන්නා අරනායක ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම් කොට්ටාසේ අධ්‍යවදානම් කියලා අඳුනගත්ත දැන් තියෙනවා ගෙවල් තියෙනවා 515ක්. ඒකම අධ්‍යවදානම් කියලා අඳුනගත්ත දැන් තියෙනවා 1031ක්. ඒ අදාළ ප්‍රදේශවල මිනිස්සු තමන් ඉන්නේ අධ්‍යවදානම් පැත්තකද මධ්‍යවදානම් පැත්තකද කියලා දැනගත්තේ ඒ අපි තොරතුරු ඉල්ලුවට පස්සේ. ඒකෙන් පස්සේ එතන මිනිස්සු තොරතුරු ඉල්ලලා මම දැන් අන්තිමට අධ්‍යවදානම් 515 මෙතන ඉවත් කරලා තියෙනවා. සමහර විට මේ RTI තිබ්බේ නැත්නම් එහෙම ඒ මිනිස්සු තාමත් අධ්‍යවදානම් පැත්තක ඉඳ තිබ්බා. ඒ වගේම දැන් අපිට හරියටම දැනගන්න ඕන මාධ්‍ය විද්‍යාවට අපි RTI දාන්න ඕන කොහෙද කියලා. දැන් ධනමාධ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයෙන් ඉල්ලන්න ඕන තොරතුරු මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශයෙන් ඉල්ලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ නේ. ඒ වගේ දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට කියනවා නම් යාපනයේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ සිසුන් දෙදෙනා ඝාතනය කරපු සිද්ධිය තියෙනවා. ඒක උනේ 2016 ඔක්තෝබර් මාසයේ 21 වෙනිදා. දකුණේ මාධ්‍ය ගොඩක් වාර්තා කළේ පොලිසිය කිව්ව එක. මොකද පොලිසිය සිද්ධියෙන් පස්සේ දවසේ මාධ්‍ය නිවේදනයක් දාලා තිබ්බා මේක රියාමතුලින් වෙච්ච සිද්ධියක් කියලා. එතකොට අපි මේ පැත්තට ගිහින් ඉස්සර හෙව්වා මේක ඇත්තටම පිළි තියලා මරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක ප්‍රසිද්ධ වුණාම පොලිසියෙන් 5 දිනක් ගත්තා. හැබැයි දකුණේ මාධ්‍ය වාර්තා කළා මේ වෙඩිතැබීම සාධාරණීකරණය කරන්න මේගොල්ලෝ බීමත් හිටියා මේ පොලිස් අනතුරකය ඇති වෙදිපත් කියලා. දැන් අපිට මිනිස්සු ජනමාධ්‍යවේදීන් විදිහට පොඩි රිස්ක් එකක් තියෙනවා. මූලාශ්‍ර මිනිස්සු ඕනෑම කියන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට ඒක වාර්තා කරන්න බෑ. මොකද කවුරුහරි චැලෙන්ජ් කරොත් එimhe අපිට ඔප්පු කරන්න බෑ. සමහර වෙලාවට අපිට රහස්‍ය මූලාශ්‍රයෙන් තොරතුරු දෙනවා. ඒක වාචිකව කියනවා. ඒ වාර්තා කළාට පස්සේ කරෙක්ෂන් එකක් පත්තරේ කරේ වුණාට පස්සේ කවුරුත් ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්නේ නැහැ අපි වෙනුවෙන්. ඉතින් RTI වල තියෙන ලොකුම වාසිය මේක තමයි. ඒකෙන් පස්සේ දැන් මිනිස්සු කියන එක අපිට වාර්තා කරන්න බෑනේ. අපි ඕන හොයා බැලීමක් කරන්න. ඊට පස්සේ අපි කල්පනා මතන්නේ පෝස්ට්මෝර්ටම් රිපෝට් එකේ පශ්චාත්තාප පරීක්ෂණ වාර්තාව ගත්තනම් ඇත්තට මොකක්ද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා බලන්න පොඩි කියක් ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකින්ද මුලින් කල්පනා කළා අධිකරණයට RTI එකක් දාන්න මේක ගන්න. ඇත්තටම RTI එකක් දැම්ම අධිකරණයට. හැබැයි ඒකට උත්තර ආවේ නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ නීතිඥවරු කිව්වා පෝස්ට්මෝර්ටම් රිපෝට් එක ගන්නවා නම් එහෙට කියලා සම්පූර්ණලා ලෝයර් කෙනෙක් කරා රිමෝට් එකේ එහෙම ගන්න ඕන කියලා. ඊට පස්සේ මට කල්පනා වුණා මානවිකම් කොමිසමෙන් මේක ගැන විමර්ශනයක් කළා. ඒ විමර්ශනයේ අදාළ පෝස්ට්මෝර්ටම් රිපෝට් එක ඉල්ලලා දැම්මම ඒක හම්බුනේ. තොරතුරු හම්බුණා. ඒ තොරතුරු අනුව බලද්දී මේ ළමයි බීමත් ඉඳලත් නැහැ ඒ වෙලාවේ ඒකම මෙලි තියලා තියෙන්නේ ඉස්සරහින්ද. එතකොට අර පලායන් දිලදීප කියන කතාව බීමත් කියන කතාව ඔක්කොම බොරු. දැන් හැබැයි දැන් මේ සිද්ධිය උනේ 2016. මට මේ ප්‍රවෘත්තිය 2016 ඔක්තෝබර් මාසෙ මේක ලිව්ව මම මට මේක අන්තිම ප්‍රවෘත්තිය ලියා ගන්න පුළුවන් උනේ 2018 අගෝස්තු මාසයේ. ඒ කියන්නේ අවුරුදු දෙකකට විතර පස්සේ. හැබැයි අපි අත්හැරලා දැම්ම නම් මේ අර අවසාන ප්‍රතිඵලය ගන්න බෑ. ගොඩක් මාධ්‍යවේදීන් අර කාලයේ ප්‍රශ්නින් තමයි තොරතුරු ඉල්ලීම් කරන්නේ නැත්තේ.
Thank you, Tharindu. So for those who can't understand Sinhala, I'll just briefly explain what you were saying. So Tharindu was sharing two examples in particular where he actually started off saying that you can't file RTI or use it for everything. So for example, if the information is already available on the website, or if somebody tells you the information when you call on the phone, obviously there's no point in just using RTI for the sake of it. But when you can't find the information, when there is a barrier and when you try and you can't get it, that's when you need to file. So he was sharing one instance with Aranayaka, the instance of the landslide, where the residents in that area were unable to find information about compensation, and he was able to, he himself tried through the officials, they could give him the information. The citizens could find the information, and so he was able to file. And after he filed, as Sankhitha was saying, they got what they needed. So another example where RTI is being used, and rather than information being given, the solution is given. The other story that he spoke about is actually one that came to my attention as well, and I thought it was a powerful use of RTI. It was after two university students were killed in Jaffna, and it was there was a lot of misinformation going on around that killing. It was said that they were drinking, and there was a kind of cover-up of an instance of police brutality. But through the filing for the post-mortem report, he was able to get the correct information, including that they weren't intoxicated at the time. So that was Tharindu speaking about his experiences. And next, I'd like to go to Malsirini from Verité. So Verité has been using RTI for a number of their research projects, tracking, for instance, government promises on the budget, and also tracking reporting, for instance, of proactive disclosure. So drawing from those, I just wanted to ask Malsirini to reflect on what can you see about how open the government is from the research and from the work.
Thank you, Rita. So I'll start off with the proactive disclosure study that we did. So backtrack. So all the RTIs that Verité files is to inform our research. And when the RTI became operational in February 2017, we did a baseline study on
monitoring the online proactive disclosure of these ministry websites. So we monitored about 55 public authorities, 53 ministries, and the Office of the Prime Minister and President. And we assessed the content that they have on their website against the Regulation 20 of the issued under the RTI Act. So what we found in that study, which was published in December 2017, so this information, as any other information online, these ministries may have updated their information, they may have actually lost a bunch of information that they added up there, so we can't really speak to that at this point. But what we found out in the pattern of assessing, monitoring all these public authorities was that there was a high disclosure rate when it came to organizational and institutional information. So you go to any ministry site, you'll be able to find the organizational chart, what their structure is like, and also the budget information relating to that ministry. This was partly because the finance ministry was putting out all the budget-related information relating to every other public authority. So they were sort of covered from the finance ministry's disclosure of the budget. What we didn't find where there was low disclosure back in 2017 was when it came to issues sort of like public investments. What are the projects that are ongoing under that particular ministry? And also, interestingly, what sort of services does that ministry offer to the public? So what sort of RTI services, how do you access the RTI officer? All those things are supposed to be proactively disclosed under the Act, and those are missing. That's a crucial element because you're not creating awareness to the public about how they can approach your ministry. And this we've seen through our research to be a big problem, because if the information officer or the designated officer is not available in the ministry website, then we have to spend hours trying to figure out who the relevant official is. And this also goes to a different structural problem about the lack of awareness of the RTI Act amongst the other staff of the ministry or the public authority. So the first person you might meet might be the security guard or the receptionist or the reception, and then you might be told they don't know who the RTI officer is, the information officer is, they have never heard of an information officer. So we came across certain issues that we realized in our study a few years ago that seems to be applicable even today. One other thing I want to point out is that after this report was published, there was a few dialogues back and forth between the Ministry of Mass Media where they did bring their information officers and they were talking about this issue of proactive disclosure, online proactive disclosure. And there was a sense of they considered this online, the website, that world of that the public authority is supposed to be regulating to be out of their control. So when they were asked, why didn't you have this information up on your site, your ministry didn't rank quite well in this monitoring study, they said that we also have to follow the ICTA guidelines. So if ICTA is part of this conversation, we'd be much more comfortable to talk about what content can go online. That was Verité's experience with proactive disclosure and the online proactive disclosure aspect of it. When it comes to budget monitoring, Verité is in a unique position to give an overview of how ministries respond, because we have been tracking the budget promises, the openness and the progress consecutively since 2017 again. So we have now identified which ministries are forthcoming with information, which ministries have issues identifying that. We actually noticed a trend in certain ministries where they have the same problem every year. We face the same problem. Or they now know our researchers and they tend to say, well, you're making my life harder. Why can't you just find out what you have online? You have these same responses coming to you. So with the budget promises, how we track is that we file RTIs with every ministry that has been allocated a certain amount of money, and then we ask them, how have you spent your money? So when you go to ask these questions, they get, either they are very forthcoming with information, they will give you everything you want right away, or you may face a number of challenges. I'm not quite sure if I should go into it right now or a bit later.
Yeah, we'll go into the challenges
later,
but I do quickly want to ask you one thing before moving on, whether you would be able to put you on the spot a little bit to name some of those who were a little bit laxing in responding.
So I think before the panelists started, we were talking about certain experiences. So you have the Ministry of Education I can actually explain the challenges we've had later. Provincial councils, certain ministries, so we've identified a few who do the same. Actually, we've had similar experiences. And so Verité has now gone through sort of finding RTIs to inform the research, to contesting the research, to actually going all the way up to the Court of Appeal to get the information we've asked for in certain cases. So,
that's really interesting. Yeah, we'll go into that a little bit later. So moving on to Pasan, who through EPA has been kind of filing a lot of questions, a lot of requests rather, on national security issues, for example, on things like militarization and how much of the land is military. So I wanted to ask, how difficult has it been to get this information? How many times, for example, has the national security exemption been used?
Thanks, Aida. Just to, I guess, before we kind of get started about talking about national security and the archive specifically, I think national security is one of those areas where there's a very distinct difference between the state and the government, right? Especially when we're talking about information regarding national security, you see a lot of differences in how the RTI Act is responded to by institutions like the Army and basically the Armed Forces and the Ministry of Defense, compared to some of the other more public authorities like, say, the Ministry of Law and Order. Just in terms of, I guess, our experiences with that, just going up on that distinction between the state and the government, you can see a very different set of responses depending on who that information is being asked for, right? So some of our requests that we've made from the armed forces, they're very quick to cite Section 5 and the National Security Exemption. Whereas some of our requests that we send to even, say, the police or to some of the local government bodies, that tends to be met with different response, either no information being provided or the information actually being provided. And in our experience, it's been very rarely that the national security exemption is cited by some of those more public government authorities. There's also quite a bit of a difference in terms of those responses, not just in the citation of the national security exemption, but a lot of these public authorities, when you ask for information related to national security, they will choose other things to obstruct the request, right? So something we faced a lot, especially in the early stages of the RTI Act being operationalized, was that they would ask for ID, right? So they would be like, come to the military headquarters and present your ID. There's been a number of rulings by the RTI Commission since then saying that that is not something public authority is allowed to do unless they have a very strong, reasonable, objective reason to doubt the citizenship of a requester. The other thing, other obstructive, I guess, means that public authorities have used in terms of national security in our experience has been to say that we don't have the information. So they will actively outright say we don't keep it in our records. There's been one example I can say that we were requesting information about officers stationed, military officers stationed in various army camps at points during the 80s and then at points during the from the 2000 to 2010 period. And it was quite interesting that in the request relating to army personnel deployment in the 80s, they would very quickly say that we haven't kept those records, and they would also sometimes come up with very fanciful reasons, like saying that by law we're not required to keep under a certain period, and then our appeals, which are ongoing, have been to be asking them what are these specific laws that you're citing to kind of obstruct it.
that you can kind of compare with the requests we found that more recent cases, in which case they would very quickly cite Section 5, right? So sometimes the level of oversight